The dark art of influence. Most people think influence is about charisma, being loud, confident, persuasive, but real influence is far darker than that, because the people who control society rarely force behavior directly. They shape perception quietly, until people start believing their choices were their own all along. That's the real game. Influence is not controlling someone's actions. It's controlling the story inside their mind before the action even happens. And once you understand how perception shapes behavior, you start seeing manipulation everywhere. In politics, in business, in relationships, even in everyday conversations most people never question. If this perspective already changes the way you see human behavior, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who still believes influence is only about words. Most people imagine manipulation as something obvious, a lie, a threat, a direct attempt to control someone, but the highest forms of influence are almost invisible, because real power rarely announces itself. It guides perception quietly enough that people believe they arrived at conclusions on their own. That's what makes influence dangerous. The most effective manipulators do not control behavior through force. They control emotional framing. They shape how people interpret reality itself. And once perception changes, behavior follows naturally. This is why two people can experience the exact same situation and walk away with completely different emotional reactions. The facts matter less than the narrative surrounding them. A confident voice changes credibility. A title changes perceived intelligence. Status changes believability. Emotion changes memory. Human beings are far less rational than they like to believe. Most decisions are emotional first, logical second, usually arrives afterward to justify what emotion already chose. And the people who understand this gain enormous social power, because influencing emotion is easier than changing facts. Look at advertising. Most advertisements do not sell products. They sell identity, data, belonging, attraction, freedom. The product itself becomes secondary. People buy what the product makes them feel about themselves. That's influence. Politics operates the same way. The most powerful leaders are often not the most intelligent. They are the ones who understand emotional storytelling best. Fear creates urgency. Hope creates loyalty. Division creates tribal identity. And tribal identity is one of the strongest psychological forces on Earth. Once someone emotionally identifies with a group, they stop evaluating information objectively. Now the mind protects identity instead of truth. That's why influence becomes so powerful inside emotionally charged environments. People stop asking, "Is this accurate?" and start asking, "Does this align with the group I belong to?" At that point, perception becomes programmable. This is also why socially intelligent individuals rarely argue using pure logic alone. Facts alone rarely move people emotionally. Emotion opens the door first, then logic enters afterward. That's how persuasion works at the highest level. And once you understand that, human interaction starts looking completely different. You notice how tone affects authority more than content, how confidence creates perceived competence even without expertise, how repetition shapes belief, how emotionally charged language bypasses rational analysis. Most people think they are immune to influence because they associate manipulation with weakness. But intelligence does not remove emotional bias. In many cases, intelligent people simply create more sophisticated justifications for emotional decisions they already made subconsciously. That's what makes influence universal. Nobody is completely outside it. Not you, not anyone. The difference is awareness. Most people absorb emotional framing passively without noticing it. Their opinions, desires, fears, and ambitions slowly shaped by external environments they never consciously chose: social media, news cycles, peer groups, algorithms, authority figures. Over time, repeated exposure becomes internal belief, and eventually, people begin defending ideas they never independently examined. That's the terrifying part. The human mind confuses familiarity with truth surprisingly easily. The more often something is repeated, the more psychologically normal it starts feeling, even when it's destructive, even when it's false. This is why repetition is one of the oldest influence tactics ever used. Not because repetition proves accuracy, because repetition reduces resistance. And once resistance weakens, suggestion enters easier. That principle shapes almost every major system in society. Education, marking politics, corporate culture, even social norms themselves. The people with the greatest influence are often not the loudest people in the room. They are the people shaping what the room unconsciously accepts as reality. And once you begin noticing that, you start realizing how much of modern society operates through perception management rather than direct control. People are constantly being influenced without recognizing it, not through chains, through emotion, through repetition, through carefully designed narratives that shape what feels normal, desirable, respectable, or dangerous. That's why influence becomes most powerful when it feels invisible. The moment manipulation becomes obvious, resistance appears. But when influence feels natural, people defend it themselves. Look at how social status works. A person wearing expensive clothing is often perceived differently before speaking a single word. A verified account online instantly changes credibility. A confident tone changes how intelligence is perceived, even when the information itself stays identical. Why? Because the human brain uses shortcuts constantly: data signals, visual cues, authority markers, emotional framing. The mind processes perception faster than logic, and the people who understand this know something extremely important. In many situations, controlling perception matters more than controlling reality. That's why powerful individuals obsess over image, not because image is fake, because image shapes behavior. A company with strong branding can sell average products at premium prices. A leader perceived as powerful gains compliance before speaking. A person viewed as socially valuable receives opportunities others never even see. Perception creates access, and access creates influence. This is also why emotionally reactive people are easier to manipulate. The more predictable your emotional triggers are, the easier someone can guide your behavior. Fear controls attention, anger controls focus, desire controls decision-making. And modern systems study these psychological patterns relentlessly. Algorithms already know what keeps people emotionally engaged. Outrage spreads faster than calmness. Fear captures attention faster than stability. Validation becomes addictive when identity depends on external approval. That's why many people today live inside emotional cycles they mistake for independent thought. Constant stimulation, constant reaction, constant psychological programming disguised as entertainment. And the frightening part is, most individuals never slow down long enough to examine what's shaping their mind. They simply absorb, repeat, defend, then absorb again. That's not influence anymore. That's conditioning. This is why emotionally disciplined people become difficult to manipulate. Not because they know every tactic, because they control their reactions. And reaction control is one of the highest forms of power. The person who cannot easily be emotionally provoked becomes difficult to psychologically guide. They pause before accepting narratives, pause before joining outrage, pause before adopting collective opinions. That pause matters, because influence works best on impulsive minds. A calm mind creates friction against manipulation. That's why powerful influence strategies often target emotion first and logic second. Make people afraid, and they stop analyzing carefully. Make them angry, and nuance disappears. Make them desperate for belonging, and group identity overrides independent thought. This has existed throughout all of human history. Empires understood it. Religious institutions understood it. Political movements understood it. Modern corporations understand it too. Human psychology changes far less than technology does. Only the delivery systems evolve. But here's where the dark art of influence becomes truly dangerous. Eventually, people stop needing external manipulation because they begin manipulating themselves. They monitor their opinions for social approval, adjust behavior for validation, censor thoughts before speaking, perform identities optimized for acceptance instead of truth. At that point, control becomes internalized, and internalized control is far more powerful than force because people voluntarily participate in it. That's why the most dangerous form of influence is not physical domination. It's psychological ownership of perception, the ability to shape how people interpret reality before they even realize interpretation is happening. Once someone controls perception, behavior follows naturally afterward. This is why awareness matters so much, not paranoia, awareness. The goal is not to become emotionally cold or distrust everyone. The goal is to recognize how easily human perception can be shaped when emotion overrides conscious thought. Because once you understand influence deeply, you stop reacting automatically to everything around you. You begin questioning narratives more carefully, questioning emotional manipulation more carefully, questioning whether your desires, fears, and beliefs truly belong to you, or were installed there slowly through repetition and exposure. And that level of awareness changes a person completely, because the moment you start thinking independently instead of emotionally echoing the environment around you, influence begins losing its automatic power over your mind. That is where psychological freedom actually begins.